Hello there, and welcome to episode 13 of my tutorial series for Dwarf Fortress. In this one, it's going to be the construction of a library, and we're going to go over the production of the necessary goods, namely paper, bookmaking, and everything in between. So first up, let's bring some library into that room. We go into the meeting area yet again, and you mark that room. Assign it here in that menu as a library. So that's the designator. A library wants bookcases, tables, and chairs as its furniture. It also wants to have chests for the writing material. So a baseline setup would be a bit of bookcasing, wherever you want it. The books will be stored in there, obviously, and the tables going to go with a very minimalistic setup here for the sake of demonstration. Go crazy and make it beautiful, because being here is going to make your dwarves happy again, as it is one place where people can socialize at. So the library again has also a configuration for visitors or not visitors. You can configure it whether you want outside scholars or not. Speaking about scholars, so here's scholars and scribes. Scribes only copy existing books, whereas scholars are doing research and going to try to write new books. So for reasons that I cannot properly fathom, there is also the necessity of a lever here. So you assign a scholar, whoever you want to, whoever is to your liking, and it should be somebody who's not busy with another task, because your scholar will probably live in there. Currently a little bit low on people, but well, it is as it is. So this scholar now will pick up the job to research in there. But to properly research and to properly force them to do so, the best way is to use a lever. You go there, you assign it to a certain somebody. You can check out the scholars with this icon here. So that lever is now assigned only to that scholar, and the task will be to pull the lever forevermore, with endless repetition and high urgency. And the weird thing is, your scholar will now move on in there, flick that switch, and start pondering about things that he or she could write. And that's how it works. So you don't need more to set up a library. Obviously, more bookcases bring more storage room. More tables and chairs bring more writing and reading spaces, and chests are hardly ever necessary because the storage of writing material isn't too much of a big deal, but you can of course expand that as well. So to make books, we need paper. So let's get started with this topic. Paper can again be made out of various materials. There's the classic fiber-based paper. That's what we're going to produce together first. There's parchment. That's what we're going to produce after that. And there's also papyrus. So if you get as lucky as you could to get some papyrus, you can just simply process this papyrus directly with this command at the Farmer's Workshop into paper. This is the best and strongest source of paper in the game. So if you happen to have that stuff, congratulations, you can write your books on that right from the get-go. So we're going to get started now with the plant fiber-based paper. So your crop that you can grow for is pigtails. So with pigtails, you can get yourself a piece of paper. Sadly, they're all dead, otherwise I would have foraged them. So you can just forage them like that if they are fresh. If not, well, you have to wait for your harvest. Let's see if there's anything out there in the caverns we could grab us, but no. Right now, it's not the season for the pigtail. It's not summer or autumn. But nevertheless, we can bring up the work orders and play it through. So the process is very simple. You go on over here and you mash the plant into a slurry, just like we did with the rock nuts in the previous episode, and that slurry will then be pressed here at the screw press into paper sheet. And that's it. That's how you make your plant-based paper, and it's the easiest way to set it up. I recommend you to set up some automation for that. This is also, by the way, one of the reasons why I keep some of these jobs like these. How to automate it, there's very, very many ways. My personal favorite goes something like that. So I'll be doing that if we have more than one slurryable plant, but I also make it so that only a low amount of that stuff is available at any point. So a portion of my pigtail harvest will be transformed into that, but only until we have a certain amount of globs. And after that, can go here into the press plant slurry into paper sheet job, and here you can fire that off only if there is, let's say, if the amount of sheet drops below 10. This will result in a industry that only grabs pigtail if paper actually gets used up. So it will hog a few pieces of pigtail, but after that, you're golden. You don't need to worry too much about that. Also, I wanted to mention here at that point that pigtail gets grabbed also by the kitchen and gets transformed into drink. So if you happen to be able to harvest yourself a pigtail, unlike I right now am unable to, you can just get harvest one via foraging and then forbid it at the kitchen. It's my personal go-to method. Okay, so that's how you make paper out of plant materials. There's a couple of other plants that you can also use. I recommend you to pick up the Dwarf Fortress Wikipedia if you're interested in which plants can also yield paper, but pigtails always work. Hey, look at that. There's one piece of pigtail that we can use for the sake of demonstration. Wonderful. And so you go there. And what I went to show is that the moment it is in the possession of your harvester, you can't forbid it, and I highly recommend you to. It's so useful when it's like that. Yeah, the rest we already have explained that. Let's move on over to the parchment production. First off, to make parchment, you will require quicklime. Quicklime is being made out of calcite, chalk, limestone, or marble. These four stones can be transformed into quicklime. To make it, you need to construct yourself a kiln, which is the production site also for all clay-based materials. But here at the bottommost thing, you have also the make quicklime command. Here, one of these boulders will be taken and combined with fuel and a bag. So here you will need a bag. You will make a bag full of quicklime out of that. So that's the first step. Before this can be used for the parchment production though, the quicklime needs to be transformed into milk of lime. And that's being done at the ashery. As soon as this thing here is done, that is. Let's give our lady here a second. And we go upstairs to the ashery, and here we now can make milk of lime. So this process again requires a bucket. Practically everything at the ashery requires a bucket, and that stuff is then what we can use to make parchment out of. The really problematic part about parchment, and the one thing that bugs me about it, is you can only make parchment out of a raw hide. The tannery, though, will grab every single piece of raw hide and transform it automatically into leather. This is an automated process that you can change here at the standing orders area, where you can automate the tannery or not. I personally have the tannery always automated because otherwise your hides will go bad, but I'll leave this task up to you how you want to fix that. So the bucket is loaded now with milk of lime, and we can now go into our livestock area, and you need to slaughter now an animal to get yourself a piece of hide. We're going to take one of the dogs, And there we go. And as you see here, we have now our first Guildhall petition. I've been explaining that a couple of episodes ago, so if you need instructions, check out the playlist. So that job has been fulfilled, and now we have the stray dog skin. This is what we now take over to the tanner's shop, and as you can see here, tanner hide already locked and loaded. But you cancel that, and here is make parchment. So basically, it is, in my humble opinion, entirely impossible to automate the leather and parchment production while the tannery is automated like that. So if you want to work with parchment as your main material for your books, you will have to automate the tanners with according work orders. I recommend something like the tanners always tan away the stuff, and the parchment makers make parchment up until a certain amount of parchment, and then you need a couple of work orders for the quicklime and such. Parchment production is really complicated, but, well, that's how it works. You have a piece of dog parchment sheet afterwards, or whatever you have used. Now, to the actual process of bookmaking, because so far, that isn't a book. This is just the paper that we can use to turn it into a book. So we go now next to our crafts dwarfs workshops. These are the people mainly involved in bookmaking. So here we can make ourselves quires and scrolls. Quires are basically soft covers. It's the best comparison that I can't find. To make a quire, you will pick up a sheet of paper and it will be transformed into that, and that quire will then be picked up and transported into your library, and once one of your scholars is being struck by inspiration, he'll fill that quire with something to read. The other option is you need scroll rollers, and these can then be transformed with a sheet and scroll rollers into a scroll. The scroll does operate the same way as a quire does. It just has a different value and a different volume. It's up to you how you want to fill your library. Technically, they both work very similar. Last but not least, there's also the art of bookbinding. So a bookbinding can be made out of various materials, can be made out of rock, out of metal, out of wood, various things apply. So first up you make a bookbinding, and then that bookbinding requires a quire that has been already written upon, and then you need thread, and then you need take thread, bookbinding, and a quire, and combine all these into a codex. This is the most powerful way to upgrade yourself a book. Currently, sadly, it's bugged though. The moment you transform your quire into a codex, it loses a lot of its content and almost always even lose a portion of its worth. So I highly recommend you to stick with quires and scrolls until these problems have been fixed. And as you see here, it's now a done deal. And there's this thing. The quire, and our scholar is hopefully scholaring soon, and that's how you make libraries and paper. If you have any further questions to this topic, ask away. I'd be really helpful out there, because, you know, this is, after all, not too complicated once you know what you're doing, but until you know what you're doing, it can really freak you out. And it did freak me out, so I know what I'm talking about. So, leave a thumbs up, consider subscribing. I'd be really delighted to have you guys. There's in the description box a lot of other links that are helpful for Dwarf Fortress, and apart from that, I want to thank the supporters of the channel. Check out Patreon, PayPal, and Buy Me a Coffee if you want to join on in. They are the topmost links in the description box below. And here, again, a thanks to everybody who's still watching this video. Hope you come back soon, and in the next one, we're going to go for a military squad. So, see you guys there. Have a nice time. Bye-bye.